my friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tiffany, and in today's video we are talking all things 2025 garden plans, landscaping plans, just all the wonderful things outside with the beautiful flowers and just dreaming of mornings on the porch. I'm so looking forward to the spring. We had a little bit of a taste yesterday. It was like 55 during the day and beautiful. And today it's 24 with a wind chill of like 14 degrees. So right now all we're doing is planning, and it is helping me get through these cold months with bare trees, knowing that, warmer days are ahead and that the garden is going to start to look like this again very, very soon. So if you're here for it, if you want to talk all things 2025 gardening plans, let's go ahead and get started. Before we go any further in today's video though, I want to take a second to thank our sponsor, probably one of the most important sponsors I've ever had, and that is Aura. If you guys are like me, you are online every single day, whether it's checking your emails, on social media. I use an online platform literally as my career, my business. And every single day, big companies with poor security are getting hacked and your personal information is being sold on the dark web. So spammers, scammers, and identity thieves can target you. And let's be honest, they face zero repercussions for it. It's on us to protect ourselves, and that is where Aura comes in. Aura keeps you safe online by doing all of the hard work for you. They will identify data brokers who are selling your personal information online and automatically opt out for you. Give Aura a few weeks and you'll see your information stop showing up on their sites, which will mean less spam for you. Aura will also continuously monitor the dark web and will alert me anytime my information is spotted there. They're also going to let me know super fast if this information is ever used to try to access credit cards or bank accounts. Plus, they give me up to $5 million in identity theft protection insurance should the worst case scenario ever happen. The Aura app has a virtual protection network or VPN of 100 plus locations, so you are protected. You can go to my link, aura.com/Charlotte Grove, to try Aura for 14 days for free. That'll be enough time for Aura to determine if your personal information has been exposed online and will give you next steps on what you're going to do from there. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you are online as much as I am, finding a way to make sure that your personal information is protected is so invaluable. So thank you, Aura, for sponsoring today's video. I sincerely appreciate it. So I kind of made myself a little outline for this video and tried to write down all the things that I want to talk to you about. And honestly, it was more for me and like how I want to systematically approach the garden and the landscape this year. For those of you who don't know, we live in New England. We live on the 6A, 5B border, basically. Just kind of depends on who you talk to. And I always just err on the side of caution, and I just look for plants that are hardy down to 5B. That way, if it gets too cold, I don't worry. Like, we have had some very, very cold nights here, in the single digits. And I just want to make sure that if I'm investing in a plant that is meant to be a perennial and will come back, I want to make sure that I'm taking care of it. So that's really important that you know where you live, right? And that you know what you can grow where you are. And so I live in the 5B, 6A area, and I have a lot of properties. So we have about 2.5 acres of property. A lot of that, probably a good like 3/4 of an acre-ish or so, is in the trees. So we do have like a lot of forest, if you will, but we also have a lot of yard, and Danny and I both agree that we don't need like a ton of grass. We definitely would like to maybe eventually like push back our yard and push back the tree line. I'm looking at it like you can see it, but kind of just give us a little bit more back there to give us more room for fun stuff like fire pit areas and pools, not pools, multiple, a pool. And this year, the addition of a vegetable garden. So that's the plan. But we have just been slowly but surely landscaping. We had our builder put down soil and loam and seed, but that was it. All of the landscaping we have around our property is stuff that we did on our own. I just did a ton of research. I watch a ton of YouTubers. My favorite is probably Stephanie over at Hooked and Rooted. She's a fellow New Englander as well. She lives, I think, in Western Massachusetts, so she's not close by, probably about an hour away, but she's a fellow New Englander. And then I also obviously love Garden Answer. It's a great channel. I also love Grow With Me Gardening. That was the channel that I started watching last year. Those gentlemen are so nice. So there's lots of people that you can follow. I am in zero way an expert. In fact, I really don't even know what I'm talking about most of the time. So do not take what I have to say as like the end all be all for gardening. Please do your research because I honestly don't know. I'm learning as I go, but I'm sharing what I know with you. So all of that, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I want to do, and I'm just looking at my notes here. You guys know I take tons of notes on my phone, and I have lots of programs now that I use to help keep my thoughts in place. But the first thing I want to do is assess my current situation. So there's a number of things that I want to assess. So I want to first look at what we have done. I would love to have Danny take the drone up and get just a nice overview shot of the land and what it looks like right now so that we can kind of get an overall picture of what we want and see like what beds we have. The nice thing is just because you've made a bed doesn't mean that it has to look like that. So we added an extra bed in last year, but we want to connect that to our other front bed and just kind of extend them, make them bigger. We need to evaluate and assess where the sun hits our plants. So now that we've been here, I think this will be our 4th full growing cycle. I understand now like how the sun hits my property and how it's going to either help my plants grow or hinder the growth. So a perfect example of this is I have a snowball hydrangea an incredible hydrangea in the front of my property, right to the right, if you're looking out to the street, to the right of my porch. And it's the same one as what I have in the front that blooms and has it still has the big, beautiful heads, big old mop heads on it. But it doesn't get a lot of sun. And I thought that hydrangeas were shade-loving plants, but the truth is they actually need at least like a good 6 hours. And I think 6 hours is considered a full sun plant. But I'm telling you right now, that one will get 3, maybe 4 hours sometimes, and it is nowhere near enough. And it has completely gone dormant. It does not bud at all. It doesn't give me blooms whatsoever. So this year I'm going to move it and I'm going to put it in a sun-loving spot, and I'm going to cross my fingers that maybe it will give me blooms. I have a feeling it's just completely just changed, the chemical makeup of that plant. I don't know that I'll ever be able to get blooms from it, but we're going to give it a shot. I figured before I just cancel it, you know what I mean? We're going to give it a shot. I have some hostas. I love a hosta. This is what a hosta looks like. These are some of my absolute favorite plants for the garden. And they're perennial. They come back every year. Every year they've come back bigger. They get these tall purple stems, blooms that I actually cut off. I don't like them, but I love just that like cabbagey look of a hosta. And they do like shade, although mine I have in the front, they do get a decent amount of sun and they've done fine. You just got to keep them watered. But I do have some that are covered. So right now I have one that's covered by that hydrangea that hydrangea is going to move. So whatever I put there, which I think we're going to put an arborvitae there. I just need to make sure that hosta is good and isn't going to be covered. I also need to cage my other big hydrangea. So it gets big giant heads and they are heavy, and the stems, I try really hard not to cut back too much of the stems. So that way it's got some sturdiness to it, but they do bloom on new growth. So you can cut that thing all the way down to the bottom and start fresh. I did that last year thinking maybe that would give me hardier stalks, but it didn't. And when it rains and we can get some, serious thunderstorms in the summer, those mop heads were just fallen over, and that there is nothing worse than seeing your big beautiful hydrangea laying on the ground in the mulch. And so I did a lot of research on how to cage it. You know, you can use like peony cages, tomato cages, that kind of thing, basically like this, where you're creating a grid so that your flowers grow up through that, and it's going to help keep them protected. Right now I have a bunch of flower stakes in there, but they are not enough to hold those big heavy mop heads when they're covered in rain. And then the other thing I need to do is I need to figure out if my Gracious Gardener rose, which is the David Austin rose that I planted last year, I put a trellis in the front of my house. The plan was for this Gracious Gardener to climb the trellis right here in the front, so we could just smell that when we're sitting out on the porch. However, that big gorgeous hydrangea completely covered it and stole all its sun and light. So it did not, it grew, but it didn't give me a single rose last year. Now that is not uncommon for roses, right? They say the first year is like they're establishing themselves, the second year they're growing, and the third year they're thriving, right? They're blooming. I know there's like a special phrase and I can't think of it right now, but I just need to make sure it's getting enough sun where it's located, and if it's not, I need to move it. The other thing I need to assess is I need to just check my soil. And last year I partnered with Sunday and we fertilized, we tested our, they have an awesome program where you test your soil, and they told us exactly what our soil makeup is. That way you understand how to water and how to fertilize, because you can't just put something in the ground and expect that it's going to do its very best. You need to feed it. And we learned that our soil has a ton of sand and a ton of clay, and that means that things are going to dry out quickly, which makes sense because we get a ton of water up here. So they would need to dry out quickly or nothing would survive, right? But that also means that because they dry out quickly, they're not holding any nutrients. So we have to make sure that we're feeding them, make sure that we're fertilizing. Last year was the first year that I actually did like true fertilization of my plants, and they looked phenomenal. My catmint was giant and gorgeous. The colors were so vibrant. Everybody told me, don't fertilize that. It's going to be too big and it's going to fall over. It was just, everything just looked so healthy. The hostas were big and healthy. Everything looked so good. So I need to make sure that I am getting a good plan. I kind of want to see where it's at right now so that I'm not adding what it doesn't need. You know what I mean? I also want to just have some really defined gardening goals this year. So for me, that's making sure my plants are healthy. I want to create really defined spaces. The gentleman over at Grow For Me Gardening, they talk all the time about having rooms in your garden. So they have like a hydrangea room. So like different places in your garden where you have like specific type of plants and things like that. And I love that. One of the things that we're going to add this year is a rose garden. Roses are my absolute favorite flower, and especially pink roses. And so we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So I just want to make sure that we are defining our spaces really well. There's parts, you know, flower beds that we need to just better define, and expansions. There's flower beds that I want to bring out, make bigger, add more things to. And then the other thing is that we want to add vegetable gardening this year. So it's a big goal. I don't know how much of that we're actually going to get done. Stay tuned. We'll see, but that's a big goal. So the second thing for me is being mindful of choosing the right plants. It is so easy to just fart your way around the nursery and pick out anything that looks beautiful. I fell into that trap last year. I decided I wanted flowers in my hanging planters on my front porch, but they just don't get enough sun and they just did not do well. Normally I do ferns up there because it's a perfect spot for them. They don't get too much sun. Ferns do not like a lot of sun. They're actually very finicky when it comes to that. And so normally I do ferns there and they do great, but I wanted flowers last year and it did not work. So we're gonna go back. We're gonna do ferns again this year. And I wanna just make sure that I'm being smart. At the beginning of the season, I wanna make sure that I'm paying attention to picking cool weather flowers and not falling in love with them like ranunculus, knowing that those are not going to last. Those are cold weather flowers that are not going to last, right? And this year I didn't do any bulbs. I did no tulips or daffodils or anything like that, but maybe next year I will. I like them. I think they're pretty. They're just not like my favorite type of flower, and I just don't really know where I'd put them. So I didn't do any this year, but we'll see if maybe next year I do some. For my summer flowers. Now I have my perennials out there. I've got my catmint, my hydrangeas, I have roses, and I have hostas. Hostas are not technically a flower, but they do have a bloom on them. And then of course I do have boxwoods, and I have some winter creepers, which are other evergreens. I did also add one butterfly bush last year that was really, really pretty. We'll see how that does this year. But usually I put some annuals in the ground. Usually I do some supertunias from Proven Winners, and I'm going to do the same this year, but I think I'm gonna stick in a very monochromatic color wheel. So my plan this year is to do whites, because I already have whites. My hydrangeas are white, but then they also turn chartreuse green pretty early in the season, usually like by mid-July. They're like a chartreusey green. But I have white roses up front as well. I have pink roses up front, and then I have the purple of the catmint, which is my favorite. So I want to add the bubblegum supertunias again. Here's a picture of my bubblegum supertunias from last year. I love these. They're bright pink. They're so pretty. They're so vibrant. They grow in abundance if you keep them watered and fed with annual fertilizer, which you can use every time you water them. The blooms just stay super colorful, and the foliage stays green. They just look so beautiful, and they just look great against my white house. We put black mulch. It's just stunning. So my plan this year is to create big, beautiful pots like this of just overflowing bubblegum pink petunias and have them all throughout my yard. So pots throughout my landscaping, like in the beds. Not everything needs to be in the ground, some in the ground, and then some like out at the fire pit, some on the back deck. Last year on the deck, I did white and green only in the flower boxes. And although that's pretty, it's summer. Like I want color this year. So I'm gonna just, bubblegum pink is just gonna be everywhere, you guys, everywhere. It's so pretty. They grow so well. And I just think they're gonna look stunning. The other thing that we're gonna be doing is expanding our flower beds in the front. So we've got the one flower bed that comes out in front of the porch and goes down the side of the house. That's where we're gonna be moving that one hydrangea. It's where I've got some boxwoods. We did last year plant a river birch, and the plan is to bring the flower bed all the way out so that that river birch is part of the flower bed, and then I can add a whole bunch more things down there. We'll tidy up the boxwoods, and then I can do some lower plants, down at the bottom. And then in the corner, I do have another catmint to complement the catmint that I have on the other side. So it's just gonna look so stunning. I'm so excited about that. And the other thing too is so right now that flower bed stops, comes down the side of the house and then stops where the rock retaining wall is. And this year we're going to expand that flower bed down that rock retaining wall, and that's where our rose garden's going to be, because that gets the most sun. And I adore roses, you guys. I'm gonna share some pictures with you here of the roses that I would like to have in our rose garden. Again, sticking with like a certain color, because I like that. I like to see that there's like a theme to a garden. I like when there's like a little bit of a monochromatic feel. So I like multi-petal roses. I like the ones that look like they're almost like a peony. There's just so many. So one that I love so much is the Earth Angel. I'm gonna put it right here. This is the Earth Angel rose. I love this rose. I want to plant these. Another one that I am obsessed with is the Queen of Sweden rose. Look at this. Like, it looks like a peony. It's so incredibly beautiful. They're hardy and they're just stunning, absolutely stunning. And then on top of the others two, those are two that I absolutely want to have. But on top of that, what we want to do is in the front, on either side of my garage, I have 2 barrels, and I'm going to add trellises that go up the side of the house. And I'm going to plant Eden climbers. This is what an Eden climber looks like. These are stunning. They're cream on the outside with this gorgeous pink in the inside. They've got countless petals. They are so stunning. And the goal is for these to climb up either side of the garage and then meet in the middle, you know, across the pergola. Obviously that will take years, but eventually this will be what it looks like. That will be the goal, and it'll be done with that Eden climber. Just so very pretty. The other thing we want to do, which we may or may not get to this year, we will see. Gardening can be a very expensive hobby depending on, you know, where you're at in your landscaping goals. If you're adding a lot of new plants, it can be very pricey. Perennials can be very pricey because they're coming back every year. And you want to make sure that you're getting a good quality plant. You know, you don't want to be you know, I have gotten clearance plants that I've brought back to life, but usually those are annuals. I'm not trying to get a perennial that way. But eventually we would like to have a vegetable garden in the backyard, out, you know, by our neighbor's house. This would be a picture of some inspiration that we would like. I'd like to have low beds on the ground. We went back and forth on if we wanted raised beds or low beds. I like a low bed. And I'd like a nice fence around it with some pretty chicken wire, and maybe some kind of, you know, dwelling, if you will, whether that be a greenhouse, an eventual chicken coop if we want to have chickens, or if it's, you know, just like a shed, but something that's going to ground the garden and just give it a very cottage feel. That's my goal. I love this layout right here with the fountain in the middle. I think that is stunning. I think that will bring birds and bees, and I love the look of topiaries in the center of your vegetable boxes. That's kind of what I'm going for. So I want something that looks very whimsical and cottagey, but also that is very structured and has symmetry to it, because if I'm going to see it out of my house, I want to make sure that it is well maintained, well manicured, and looks really pretty. A lot of my neighbors grow vegetables. My mother-in-law grows vegetables, so we've talked a lot about maybe doing like a co-op situation where we each pick what we're going to grow so then we can share with each other. We're going to see how the crops do. Obviously, I'm not ready to co-op yet. I've never grown a vegetable garden, so I got to figure it out first. You know what I mean? Before I just jump in and tell people I'm promising them cucumbers, right? So although it's, you know, just the beginning of March and temperatures are still low, it's going to be time for us to start prepping the garden and the landscape. Number one is removing all of the winter debris. So you don't have to get rid of old mulch, but we will remove some so that we can make room for fresh mulch. And I think I want to do a little bit of compost as well. So putting down some compost soil will also help to feed your plants. I want to make sure that, you know, my soil is healthy. So that might look like retesting the soil just in my flower beds. I just want to make sure that we're, you know, being mindful of that. It's the ice dropping in the refrigerator. Sorry about that. Making sure that I am fertilizing appropriately, you know, in the flower beds. And then the other thing too is just making sure that our irrigation is good. So Danny put in sprinklers. I don't think it was last year. I think it was the year before. And then he's also, maybe it was last year. I honestly don't remember. They all blend together. He did put in drip irrigation last year in my flower beds, which was amazing. So incredibly helpful. He did put in timers last year, so that is awesome. And then he's also going to be adding drip irrigation down the driveway. He's already got all the tubing and everything for that. It's just, it got so late in the season, he didn't get to get it into the ground. So that'll be a goal for this year. And then the other thing too is I'm gonna ask him to do some drip irrigation to the flower planters on either side of the garage. So for those climbing roses, so I don't have to panic about those, especially while we're traveling in the summer. So the next thing that I was thinking about is whether or not I want to do seeds or if I want to do just store-bought nursery plants, and there are benefits to both for sure. If you have the availability and the space to start your flowers from seed, I would highly recommend you do that. It's definitely more cost effective, and I think it's a little bit more rewarding to know you started that plant from the very beginning. If you head over to Stephanie's channel over at Hooked and Rooted, she is currently doing a lot of her flowers from seed, you know, and they're all starting to sprout, and it's just amazing. And I think eventually maybe I'd like to have a space down in the basement for that, but right now, no, it just gets far too cold down there. Last year, I did a lot of purchasing from local nurseries. Honestly, my local Walmart has a fantastic gardening section in the spring and summer. And I got a lot of annuals there. I don't want to spend a lot of money on an annual. It's only going to last for that one season. So a lot of things like begonias. I did some really beautiful pink begonias last year that I think I'd like to do again in some shady areas. So definitely check Walmart. They have really nice annuals, especially the Better Homes and Garden line. I think my 2 cat mints are Better Homes and Gardens. But one thing I did last year that I'm definitely going to do this year is ordering from a nursery online, like buying from the grower directly. So last year I bought my bubblegum petunias directly from Proven Winners, and they just came in the mail and it was perfect. I did pay a little bit more, I think, than I paid for the bubblegum petunias at a local nursery, but this guaranteed how many I got. They were in great condition. You can buy compostable pots where you literally just plant them in the pot, which makes it easy to take them out at the end of the year if you're putting them in the ground. So there is definitely something to be said about ordering your flowers directly from the source. So I would highly recommend that you check that out. I will definitely be ordering my bubblegum petunias from Proven Winners, and you can put that in now, like you can order those now and pick the date for them to be shipped to you. So I'm probably going to do that later this month, so that way I have that down. I just want to determine how many I want. I'll probably end up buying more anyway, but you know, you just can't go wrong. They just look so pretty. You can put them anywhere. So the next thing I want to talk about is pests and weeds. So these were major issues for us last year. Weeds, not so much. Pests, out of control. For weeds, I would just highly recommend that you get mulch, put mulch down, stay on top of the weeds. That was something I did last year every single morning throughout the summer. While drinking my coffee, Danny and I would go outside and we would pick the weeds literally all of the time. And when we let it go for too long and it got out of control, I would pay my little boys to pick the weeds. But weeds are not that hard to take care of. Put your mulch down. There is organic weed spray that you can use, you know what I mean, so that the weeds don't come back. However, the number one issue we had last year was slugs. Slugs are out of control. And I mean, they were so bad. They just were eating holes through my hostas. And so that is definitely something this year that we have got to get ahead of. So we're doing our research. If you have any suggestions, let me know. I know that we need to treat the grass before, it's like for grubs and everything. So it's definitely something we need to do this year. And then the other problem is Japanese beetles. So in our area where we live, Japanese beetles are a major issue. We didn't have them terribly last year, but they definitely were trying to wreak havoc on the river birch. So we've got to make sure we're staying on top of that because they can just destroy your plants. There is nothing worse than putting in all of this effort to get big, beautiful flowers and plants, and then the pests come and destroy them. The other thing that we do have to watch out for here are deer. We do have deer. So Danny did spray my hostas last year with some deer repellent. It is the worst scent you will ever smell. It is god awful, but you know what? It did its job. It kept them away. You can also do like pairing planting so that you're putting plants that the deer don't like when close to ones that they do. So that way, you know, you're hoping to keep your flowers or your plants from being deer food. There's also like sirens you can use, and there's things you can do. It has not been a massive issue for me. My poor friend Stacy, she lives across the street and down. She's got like a back lot and like 4 acres of property, and she had all these beautiful hostas that literally the deer just devoured. I felt so terrible for her because they're not going to come back up. Like once they're up, they're done. And they're there for the whole season. So I just felt so terrible for her. So number one for me is just getting in front of those slugs because those things are disgusting. I just can't stand them. Like just thinking of them gives me, I just cannot stand them. The last thing I think that is a goal for me this year when it comes to my garden plans and landscaping plans is just to create a good maintenance plan. So getting that drip system into every pot, well, not like my little pots I can do myself. If we can put a drip in them, we'll do it. But just getting the drip system into anything we can and having a good solid watering schedule. You got to keep an eye on the weather because you don't want to overwater. So if you're getting a lot of rain, turn your drip off. Want to make sure that I'm staying on top of regular pruning and deadheading. That makes a huge difference, especially in things like your roses, your petunias, you know, anything that's just continuously blooming throughout the season. You want to get that stuff that's spent off of there so that that energy that's being put into keeping that going is going to just create some new growth. With the super petunias, they're kind of trailers and spreaders. And so cutting back ones when they're getting a little too leggy will help to push more growth and make them a little bit more bushy and beautiful. So just staying up on top of that, and then staying up on my fertilizing timelines. So fertilizing my annuals weekly, and you know, any kind of flowering plant, especially those annuals, making sure that they're getting a good amount of fertilizer throughout the season. That was really beneficial last year. I used both the Proven Winners annual fertilizer, and I also used fish fertilizer, and that did a great job. I also used fish fertilizer on my indoor plants, and that made a big difference. And on the ferns the year before, and that did a really great job. And then the other thing too is remembering that mid-season fertilizing of my perennials, like the hydrangeas and things. So just kind of putting that on the calendar so that I know it's there will be, you know, really important. So those are my 2025 gardening and landscaping plans, ambitions, pie in the sky dreams. I'm not really sure. One thing I didn't mention is some kind of landscaping down at our mailbox. That's something we talked about doing last year that we didn't do. Everything we've done is like close to the house. The furthest we got was adding a little flower bed around one of the trees in our driveway, but I want to do something down at the mailbox area, kind of that front area, you know, so it's a little more welcoming when you come into our property. Not really sure exactly what yet, but something low maintenance. I go back and forth between putting something that's evergreen, or putting something that is just going to come back every year, pretty perennial, like a big hydrangea, you know what I mean? Or something like that. Or having a big, giant, permanent planter that I switch out for the seasons. That's what I lean more towards. And now that Danny is putting in sprinklers down there, he can put a drip to it so I don't have to haul water all the way down there, because that is why I haven't done anything, because we have a like 400-foot driveway that we don't have, you know, like a golf cart or something, and it's a pain in the butt to get water down there. So it will be much better once he has some kind of water source down there. That would be much better. So that's it. I guess the last thing is, you know, we got to try to stay positive through the unpredictable weather right now. I know New England, I'm coming now into my fourth official spring. I think we moved here in the fall of 2020, and it's, you know, so I went through spring of 21, 22, 23, 24. So my fifth spring in New England. And I got to tell you, there's something here. There's something to be said for what they call the false spring. And it is so true. It's where you get a couple of these warm days, you think you're doing good, you go out and you buy some plants, and then all of a sudden you've got a snowstorm. So, you know, well, people always say don't do anything until Mother's Day. I don't know if I'm going to wait that long, but definitely want to get through March and stick to those cold loving plants for now. So that way I'm, you know, not ruining my investments. So just trying to stay positive through the unpredictable weather. I want to try to keep a garden journal this year. That's something that I haven't done. And I wish that I could go back through a journal and think about how, you know, my plants have done over the years. I just am relying on memory, which, you know, at 41, it's not that great anymore. But I wish that I could just kind of go back and look through how it went, and I want to keep better track of, remember this for next year, you know? So I want to keep a garden journal for future plans. And my best advice to you, if you are just getting started, just start small. Start small, do a ton of research. Yes, it's fun to willy-nilly buy plants that you see that are beautiful and you like a lot. Do that if you want to. Try to do it with annuals unless you've done your research. But make a plan, look at other people's gardens for inspiration, figure out the plants that catch your eye, that you're constantly drawn to, colorways that you're constantly drawn to. I'm drawn to cottage gardens, pinks, purples, whites, greens. I like the darker like plum, the chartreuse green of like a sweet potato vine as, you know, pops of color. I just find that those, you know, they're beautiful to me, where other people might prefer the reds and the yellows and the oranges. But figure out what works for you, make a plan, and then start buying. Don't just willy-nilly, because I don't know how many times have I said that in this video, but if you just buy because you like it in that moment, you may look at your garden and still be unsatisfied because you can't figure out what's off. And it may just be that you're not getting the cohesive picture when you're just buying little things at a time. So instead, if you have a cohesive picture of what you want and you're buying those specific plants, you're more likely to get a curated look that you really, really like. And listen, there is no reason, no rule says you can't just uproot something that you've planted and move it. If it's not working, you don't like it, you can move it, you can, you know, uproot it and gift it to someone else. But you don't have to just stick with it just because you've already put it in the ground. So, you know, keep that in mind. That's gonna do it for this 2025 garden plan video. I hope that you found some inspiration. I would love to hear what you guys are growing in your gardens this year. Are you a gardener out there? Do you like gardening content? I feel like now that I'm in a place where I can actually do things like this, I absolutely love gardening. It is relaxing, it's satisfying, it is rewarding, and I love it. And I never thought that I would be a vegetable gardener, but I'm actually really looking forward to that too. And I also said I'd never get chickens, but part of me really wants those now too. So who knows? I don't know what's happening to me. Maybe in this second part of my life, I'm just really leaning into my inner Martha Stewart, and I'm just gonna go with it. We'll see. I don't have Martha's income or her staff, but maybe I can do it on my own level. If you aren't subscribed, I would love to have you subscribe and come back for more. Make sure that you hit the like button on your way out. Check out Aura if you are on the internet, which you are right now, which means you're gonna need protection too. So check them out. The link is down in my description box, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, my friends.